Good morning. Today's webinar from Apprentice Makers is all about degree apprenticeships. The reason today's webinar came about is that a few weeks ago I got an email from an apprentice saying that him and some of his fellow apprentices in his business were taking part in the Brace A Challenge, a national competition to find the best apprenticeships team in the country. Part of this process was to engage with employers, and so they were wondering whether there was any work they could do to increase awareness of apprenticeships. And I said, great, yes, how about a webinar? And Ryan Coram, the apprentice in question, emailed back within minutes and said, brilliant, we'd love to. And that gave me an immediate insight into the determination of this particular group of apprentices. So today, in our attempt to provide the most value to employers that are dialing in, we'd like to do two things. The first is that I'm going to provide an overview of what degree apprenticeships are, where you can find out about them, how they've been designed, how they're funded, etc. And then the degree apprentices are going to answer our questions about their how the degree apprenticeship experience has worked for them. So before we do that, it would be great if I could just introduce the apprentices that we've got on the line. So we've got Ryan, who is a project support officer at AstraZeneca. We've got Charlie Denny, who is an associate project manager at the business, and Ellie Warburton, a business performance analyst at AstraZeneca. Before we crack on, I wonder whether, Ryan, you could just give us an overview of the business. If you could let us know how many people it employs, how many people it brings into the business that are apprentices, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So AstraZeneca is a British-Swedish pharmaceutical company. It focuses in major disease areas and has just over 6,700 employees just in the UK. We have offices all over the world. We're multinational, but more specifically to what those apprentices do, we're all based in a building called Middlewood Court in Macclesfield. For those of you who don't know where that is, it's about 30 minutes outside of Manchester. The building has over 500 people in it, and there is around 20 apprentices in there, so it's quite a decent percentage.
Okay, so there's 20 apprentices within a staff of how many?
Just over 500 in the building
500.
we're in.
Okay, all right. And is that 20 apprentices that the business takes on each year, or does it take a smaller cohort on each year, and so it's around 20 in total?
So it's 20 in total. They take on different amounts each year, so started off at 8 and have slowly worked their way down to taking on 5 a year.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you. So to help us understand how best to focus our answers to your questions, and to help me with my overview of degree apprenticeships, it'd be really good to know who we've got on the line, and help us just understand where your area of interest may be. So I'm first of all just going to submit a poll. If you haven't done a poll in GoToWebinar before, you really just need to click the radio box there according to what's most relevant for you. I probably should have said whilst we're running the webinar as well, there's a questions box that you should see in your webinar toolbar, and so if you've got any questions at all, submit them throughout the webinar at any point which you think of them, and I will try and integrate them into the discussion as we go on. Okay, 84% of people voted. Any last takers on the voting? Okay, I'll close the vote now, and I'll just share who we've got in the audience. Okay, this is the makeup. So we've got more apprentices than we would normally get onto an Apprentice Makers webinar, so that's interesting. So I think there's lots of people here potentially interested in thinking about a degree apprenticeship for them. And we've got about a quarter of the audience are employers. Okay, and then we've got some training providers and business support organisations in the mix as well. So there's quite a mix, quite a kind of broad sweep across different areas. Okay. And I'm going to ask one more question. around degree apprenticeships. If you are a business that is that's dialed in today, in fact, if you're a business or an apprentice that's currently employed, could you just let us know where you are in terms of running degree apprenticeships? Are you actually running a degree apprenticeship in your business at the moment? Okay, more votes coming in. Okay, there we go. I'll share those results. So 25% have said yes, and everyone else is in the not yet, planning to, considering it arena. So that's good news. So lots of people are joining us that are considering the whole degree apprenticeship area. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to just give an overview of degree apprenticeships. There's lots of information online about the degree apprenticeships at the moment. It's hot news. If you work in the skills and apprenticeship sector, there's lots of stories that, good news stories coming out about degree apprenticeships. And so I'm just trying to distill the most relevant information for a business that's just new to the whole apprenticeships area, and hopefully for an apprentice themselves as well. So what is a degree apprenticeship? Well, if we just think about what apprenticeships are, so apprenticeships traditionally have been delivered at different levels. Starting at a level 2, which is known as an intermediate apprenticeship, they tend to be equivalent to around 5 GCSEs, and that tends to be an entry-level apprenticeship, so a junior role in the business, and they can be started at any age, but often they are promoted to people that are at school leaver age. So that's your entry-level apprenticeship. Then we've got advanced apprenticeships, which starts at level 3, and that's equivalent to, roughly people talk about it being equivalent to about 2 A-levels. And then what we've had for a while are higher apprenticeships. So these are apprenticeships that are equivalent to a foundation degree or degree level, in some cases postgraduate level as well. So these higher apprenticeships have been around for a while, but they have been in the minority. And then around sort of 2005 time, employers started to work together with the government and with higher education, further education institutions to develop degree apprenticeships. And degree apprenticeships are actually equivalent to the higher level apprenticeships, but the difference with them, the reason they're different to higher apprenticeships, is the qualifications and the structure that brings them together. So apprentices actually achieve, when they're doing a degree apprenticeship, a full bachelor's or master's degree as a component of the apprenticeship. So a higher apprenticeship, which is equivalent, it tends to be made up of components which might include HNDs or HNCs or BTEC areas. So they tend to be a different, they're formulated in a different way, whereas degree apprenticeships have the bachelor's and master's degree as a core component of them. And the reason that they are being hailed as a great solution for people that are considering degree level education, and for employers looking to employ graduates, is that they aim to bring together the very best of higher education and vocational education. So why are they big news at the moment? Well, in November last year, universities and colleges around England were awarded 4.5 million in total across the different universities and colleges to develop new degree apprenticeships for students starting in September of this year coming. So some degree apprenticeships have already started, as with the ones we're talking about today, but they got this large amount of funding from the government to really try and make these commonplace. And so that will enable them to offer 5,200 new opportunities for apprentice employers from this September. So that's very exciting news for people that are looking at this area. So if you're an employer thinking about this area, it's worth knowing that that additional support has been awarded to organisations, and that's why they're talking about them, and that's why they're really promoting them. Okay, so what do standards mean in all this? So apprenticeships for years and years have been based on frameworks, and frameworks are really the structure behind the apprenticeship. Frameworks generally were developed by sector skills councils, and they were all the components that went together in order to call that an apprenticeship and for that to be delivered by a training provider. So it was all the different components that made it. And then a few years ago, the government started a new initiative where they brought together and helped to encourage groups of employers, and employers came together themselves to develop apprenticeships that were really employer-led. And those groups of employers were called trailblazers, and they were developed into trailblazer groups, which then developed new apprenticeships which were led by what they particularly required from particular job roles. And so that initiative has been going for a couple of years, and so far over 1,400 businesses have been involved in that process in developing new apprenticeship standards for their business areas and the job roles in their businesses, and that's been across 100 sectors. And this is when degree apprenticeships really came into its own, because degree apprenticeships have been developed by these trailblazer groups. So nearly half of all the standards that are developed are either higher or degree apprenticeships. And that's when, if you look on gov.uk and look at standards that are there, and I'm going to show you how to do that, you will see that many of them are degree apprenticeships. So it's those kind of apprenticeships that you will be considering when you think about degree apprenticeships. So last year, of the 500,000 apprenticeship starts in England that started in the 2015 to 16 academic year, only 2,000 were actually degree apprenticeships. But obviously, with the funding I talked about before from the government, that's going to be more than doubled in the coming year. And so if you're thinking about frameworks versus standards, and I hope I haven't lost people because I hope I'm not going into too much detail on it. Frameworks are what apprenticeships have been based on for many years, and they are still very valid, and they're a great option for businesses, and you can still do higher apprenticeships as part of frameworks. They are gradually being replaced by standards, and by 2020 the idea is that all apprenticeships will be based on the new standards. Okay, are you still with me, guys? Does it all make sense so far? Hello?
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Oh dear, I don't know whether I've sent you to sleep at this point. Okay, and so just quickly on the fees and funding around apprenticeships, the great thing about doing a degree apprenticeship is that degree apprentices don't pay tuition fees. So these days, when individuals are going to university and possibly having to pay around $9,000 a year for a degree, if they are doing a degree apprenticeship, they won't need to pay those tuition fees, and at the end of the degree will not only have a job, but they will also be debt-free, which is, I guess, one of the most appealing aspects for the apprentice. So that's great news. And the employer either will fund the apprenticeship training from their levy pot if their pay is over if their payroll is over 3 million, and this levy pot receives a 10% top-up from government as well. So they'll either fund them from that growing levy pot if they're a large employer with a payroll over 3 million, or if they're a smaller employer than that, or they've spent up their levy pot, the business will only need to contribute 10% towards the training and assessment, and the government will fund the rest. So good news for the apprentices and good news for the employers. So I'm aware at this point, when I'm talking about funding and standards and frameworks, that I may have lost people. So I'm going to just quickly ask this question around the funding to see whether people would like to know more information on the funding. And if they would, and they're still on at the end of the line, I will talk about the upcoming funding around apprenticeships. Okay, so I'm just getting some answers in there from people. It might take us over time at the end, so I do understand if people need to go off at the end of the webinar, but I've prepared some slides at the end to talk about that for those people interested, because often people are. Okay, I'm going to share that information so people can see how people feel about the funding at the moment. Okay, so at the end of the webinar, those that want to go and move on to other things can, but those that are interested in the funding and how it's going to change, I'm going to just run through those slides as well. Okay. So the universities that are involved in degree apprenticeships at the moment are many. There's around 30 universities involved. This was the latest list that I could find around the universities involved. That should be a break there, shouldn't it? Teesside Uni as well. And even when I was collating this list, I knew that there was other universities that were involved in degree apprenticeships. And I did a little look, for instance, at the University of Exeter, and I found that they also are. So I don't think this list is exhaustive. I think there are more involved, but this was the most complete list I could find when I was collating this this presentation. So lots and lots of universities involved, and many of them working in collaboration with colleges to deliver these degree apprenticeships. And then the apprenticeships themselves. So these are the apprenticeships, the most complete list I could find at this point of the apprenticeships that are being delivered around degree apprenticeships. So it gives you an idea. I mean, at the moment, most of the employers that are delivering degree apprenticeships are larger employers, but there's absolutely no reason why smaller employers can't also begin to look at these. And you know, we would encourage them to find out more, because it is a good opportunity to home grow your talent to match your business and as your business grows. So it's worth looking at. I'm just going to use the apprenticeship that the apprentices we've got with us today are doing as an example of how you can find out more about apprenticeships. So I understand that you are doing the apprenticeship in digital and technology solutions. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so just using that as an example, if you were interested in that particular apprenticeship as an employer or an apprentice, a good way to find out more about that is to go onto the gov.uk website. See if I can do it from here. And when you go onto the gov.uk website, that you'll be able to look at a particular standard that is relevant for the degree apprenticeship you're interested in. And it will tell you about the role of that standard, the entry requirements for it, the core skills involved, and the technical knowledge. And after this webinar, I'm going to send you a link to the standards page where you can look at all the apprenticeship standards that are around at the moment, and you can look at the individual apprenticeships for individual standards that you're interested in. Okay, any questions around that? I'm really happy to receive them. Okay, I think that's probably enough for me, and I realise I've taken up quite a lot of the webinar, so let's quickly move over to the apprentices themselves. So what we'd like to do today is focus on each apprentice in turn, and the other apprentices are going to ask them the questions that have come in from the audience and that we've prepared in advance. So I believe, Ellie, that we're starting with you, is that right?
Yes, you are.
Yes, so this is you.
Oh, yes.
Sorry to provide you in such close up there. I'm sure you don't mind. So, Ellie, if you could start by telling us a bit about your background, and then I'm handing over to you, Ryan, and Charlie to ask the rest of the questions. So, Ellie, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what your background is, what did you study, and how did you get to do a degree apprenticeship?
Okay, so I obviously started with the company 3.5 years ago, and when I came actually straight out of doing my A-levels. So I studied finance, business studies and English language, and there was a bit of uncertainty around what to do, whether to go to university, whether to go to do an apprenticeship. So I got an apprenticeship with AstraZeneca doing a level 3 NVQ business admin. That was an 18-month apprenticeship programme, and after 12 months I landed my permanent role as a portfolio analyst. And then when we started bringing in more apprentices, obviously the company were in discussion with the Manchester Met University around bringing in this degree apprenticeship, and actually it was offered to me as being an apprentice previously, is this something that I would be interested doing? So obviously I'd already done my permanent role, so I wasn't in the same structure as the apprentices currently, but I got that opportunity to do the degree apprenticeship.
Okay, great.
So Ellie, on top of that, why did you apply for an apprenticeship in the first place? So if you kind of start from the original apprenticeship and then move on to the degree.
So originally I was unsure whether university was the right decision for me, and I think that was just primarily because I was unclear around what it is that I wanted to do, and I didn't really want to go to university just for the sake of going. I did apply for university, and I kept my application open, and I did land a place with Loughborough University, but I'd already secured my role with AZ, so apprenticeships weren't really that well advertised, if you like, at school. It was more, let's go to university, that's the thing to do. And it just happened that AZ came in and said, we're going to be starting these apprenticeships, and we were the first year for them to take on apprenticeships. So I applied, and I got the role. So it was through a company called the Apprentice Academy at the time. That's who I did my NVQ with, and then obviously with landing this role. So I think it was the best thing for me to do, and I think I learned better, you know, in the industry and learning on the job. And then obviously the degree apprenticeship came into play, and it was offered to me. Again, I was a bit unsure, and I think that's just because I wouldn't consider myself being very academic. And I struggle a little bit with exams and that type of thing, but actually there's no exams within the course anyway, so it kind of gave me I think this is a good thing to do, and I think I would be stupid if I hadn't have gone down that route, and I'm glad I did.
Bro. And how long will it take to do the degree, especially in comparison to students that go just to university?
So our degree, and this is the same for all of us apprentices, is a four-year degree. So a full-time student can do the same course in 3 years, and that's because a full-time student would have 4 modules per year, whereas we have it split down to being 3 modules a year. We are actually halfway through, so we're in our 2nd year at the moment. So by 2019 we will have completed it. It feels like ages away, but it will come around very quickly, I'm sure.
So tell us a bit about your normal working week. So how much time are you spending on the job? How much time are you spending training, doing university work? What does it look like for you?
If I broke it down a little bit, I would say that because we're out, we have Mondays is our university day, so we're there from 9 till 5, and we have a set amount of hours per module, and I would say probably 10–15% of my week is made up of university, and that's because I'm including that Monday as being, that's just focusing on university, nothing work related at all. Then Tuesday through to Friday, I focus on my role and my day-to-day job, my activities, that type of thing. I think one of the things that I find beneficial is because a lot of what we're doing at work is tailored around the course, the university course, and the assignments that we're doing. I don't find I'm going away and spending loads of my spare time trying to learn something new. I'm learning both at the same time. So yeah, the Tuesday through to Friday is focus on the role. Monday is out at university.
Okay, so just building on that then, on the university side, how does your degree experience compare with what your friends doing full-time university would experience? And then how would your job prospects, do you think, compare?
So I think if I had the conversation with my friends, they would say they're really jealous of what we've got, in terms of we've secured this job placement, and is, you know, you're guaranteed that job at the end of it as well. And I think for them, most of my friends have actually gone to university and are just finishing now and, you know, struggling to find what it is that they're going to do. I mean, a couple of them have gone to university and done very specific things. For example, they want to be a teacher or whatever, and that's something they have to go to university for. So, and I think that's probably easier coming out of trying to find a job in that respect. But I think that they would also say to me, I'm very busy and I've got a lot on, and I think, well, they have a lot of spare time as well to do assignment work, whereas my week is focused around the job as well. So I think there's probably added pressure for us, and it's probably a bit more challenging for us what we're doing, but I think it's a good challenge.
Do you feel like you get enough time to do university work in the week?
Yeah, and I think it takes a certain type of person as well to do what we're doing, and it's about being able to manage that time well. I think one of the things I was worried about at the beginning was, am I going to be able to do it? Am I going to have enough time? And like, if I go back to the whole, it's, you know, the work that we're doing in my day-to-day job relates back to university. That helps, and I make sure that I set myself time to do the both. So I don't struggle. I think when you get towards a deadline, that's when you start panicking. Oh, you can get it done, but I think it's the same with anything.
And then finally, Ellie, what does a degree apprentice earn, and is it enough?
So I think it varies. I know that AZ have quite a competitive wage. If you would like to say, I'm technically not an apprentice within AZ, although I'm doing an apprenticeship degree. So I think I'm not on apprentice wage at the moment. However, I know from having the conversations with MMU that they don't take on any apprentices that are earning anything less than 12,000 a year. And I think that's probably, considering we're getting university paid for as well.
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, to get a salary and to have university paid for, it feels to me like it's a good deal. I guess for those that might be older apprentices that might be living at home or might have extra expenses, that's where it could become an issue. But particularly, I think if people are at sort of traditional university age, it might not be an issue as much.
Yeah.
Interesting. Great. Thank you, Ellie. There's a couple of photos that Ryan sent over, and I'm afraid they went in a bit randomly, but...
oh, no, what are they?
I'm not going to surprise you with anything scary, but this is one of you guys in action, I think, in one of your meetings. And I think this is a visit from the Education Minister, but I couldn't help telling that I don't think you're in this particular photo.
No, I'm not in that. That's good. Everywhere at the minute, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. But I know that the business has attracted a lot of attention by having degree apprentices. And how has that been? Because more than someone not joining a business normally, you guys have gone on lots of different activities because you are degree apprentices, haven't you?
I think it comes down to actually because we were the trailblazer for that course. So, and because we're one of probably the largest organisations that have got apprentices on the course as well, and because we are very well liked, they like to come to us to promote them. So I think it's just because we were the first year to do it, so we're just sharing our experiences. And one of the good things is the university actually came to us and said, how can we do it differently going forward, because we were the guinea pigs for them.
Yeah.
But I think it also goes down to the fact that we are a big organisation. So.
Yeah. I was interested to hear about what your peers that are at uni think of your degree apprenticeship experience. I know that Ryan and I had a conversation about this yesterday, and it seems to be that people that are at university now and dealing with the debt that they're gradually accumulating are starting to wish they'd taken, many of them are starting to wish they'd taken this particular route. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, I think so, but also this wasn't an option for when my friends were going off to university at all. So it just so happened that I'd already landed my role in the industry, and that it just came about. I think that going forward, I think it's definitely something to consider, and I still don't think people are really aware of it anyway. It's coming. But I've been to quite a few careers events recently to try and promote them, because I think it's unfair to say that university is the wrong thing to do, because it's not. And I think that if there's something very specific that you want to do, then you need to go and do it. But I think we're probably lucky in how we've landed what we have, because it was offered to us as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about it. But yes.
Great. Okay, shall we move on to you, Charlie? And we've got different questions for you so that we can cover everything in the session. Would you be able to give us some information on your background and what you studied, and how your GCSEs and A-levels then led you to doing this?
Yes. Sorry, we're all just looking at that horrendous picture that Ryan sent you. It's Ryan again. So when I was doing my GCSEs, I was in the position where I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. So I kind of chose my options on what I enjoyed and what I was good at. Got through my GCSEs, went to college, did business, English and psychology. When I was in year 12, again, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. There's no point going to university based on the fact I don't know what I want to do. I'll get into debt for no reason and be in that position where I'll probably come out of university and not get a job. That was the mind frame I was in, and at the time it was still very, university is the only option. Apprenticeships, well, aren't that great. So I went into year 13, and I actually knew somebody that had done the apprenticeship at AZ who was in Ellie's year. So I had a conversation with him, and he was like, it's great, gave me the lowdown on it, and I joined the Apprentice Academy like Ellie did, and went to them and said, this is what I want to do. I think money was a big incentive for me. A big company was another incentive. And I knew at the end of my A-levels that I wasn't going to be getting A stars. So my kind of thought process was, if I do an apprenticeship, I've got that working side of things, and I'll earn another qualification, and that's just going to look good on my CV to keep learning and keep kind of getting that. And so I applied for the apprenticeship, I got it, did the NVQ like Ellie did, and then I was in the same position where we got offered the degree apprenticeship and got onto that.
So you may never have done a degree had you not found yourself in that position where they started to run degree apprenticeships?
No, I was so against going to university at the time. I just didn't see the point for me. I mean, I understand people that have either got that career goal, they know what they want to do, or if they want to be a doctor, that kind of thing. But I felt it was really pointless because I'd be getting myself in so much debt, and I couldn't see the kind of end goal. I didn't know where I was going to be. But at the same time, I recognised that I would have liked to carry on learning and getting qualifications. So the apprenticeship was perfect for me at the time.
And so I'll hand over to you, Ellie and Ryan, to ask the rest of the questions that have come in for Charlie.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with, is your average week much like what Ellie was describing before?
Yes and no. So I think here we've all kind of got our own paths and jobs and what we do. I think we're very supported with line managers and their kind of view on how they can help us, guide us. I did kind of time allocations a few weeks ago, and my line manager was very kind of supportive in the degree. So he said, if we could do 30% of your week uni work, obviously 20% the Monday we go, and then that extra half day if you need it. He said 50% on my core role as a business analyst, and the other 20% getting involved in the IT initiatives, but also apprentice initiatives. So even like the younger guys who've come in, just if I can help them, or the break day challenge that we're doing that Ryan you'll go into, and just IT initiatives, just, I mean, other stuff that we've got going on. So yes and no.
So that kind of, when you mentioned there around support, so what kind of support have you receive throughout the apprenticeship in terms of line management support, peer support, you know, any mentoring, or that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate for we get so supported, and I tell everybody this. So my line manager, I've had a couple of line managers because of the rotations, but have been fully supportive. You know, they're always checking I'm okay, if I need any help, who to speak to. We have a mentor at work who kind of liaises with uni to make sure that we're getting on. We have reviews, A, for understanding what we're doing at uni, but B, for uni to understand how we're getting on at work. You know, are we doing okay from the work side of things? And like I just picked up on, we've got that mentor at uni as well. So, I mean, we're 100% supported. My line manager's view was, this is, you know, your degree, you know, we're supporting you to do this. So any way, shape or form we can help you, you know, we need to do that. So yeah, really supportive.
So what do what do you feel like apprentices bring to the business, the organisation?
So, I mean, personally, even when we're just sat in a room, I think we're all very enthusiastic. You know, we want to achieve, we want to take on so much responsibility. And I think from speaking to like my line manager and different members of work, they just kind of say how much energy we bring into the office, again, the enthusiasm. And I think we have a different way of thinking. I've heard that from a few people as well. Even kind of senior management, you know, see that we look at things in a different way. We look at technology, you know, we're quite in line with what's going on. So yeah, and then I think it's just positivity we bring as well, echoing what so many people have said to me.
So I think there you kind of covered as well how the business perceives us as apprentices, sort of senior leaders backing us and things like that.
Yeah.
What about the perceptions of degree apprenticeships amongst A-level students and schools, and how we can make them become a first choice if you don't think they already are?
So I think when I was doing my A-levels, I mean, there was nothing around this, but even apprenticeships weren't well supported. I think it was university or you go and sort yourself out. So I think for A-level students now, it's just really important that they know exactly what this involves, how to get to it, how to apply. I think it's really important that, you know, apprentices who are doing it and living it go and speak to them, because I think it might be a bit daunting having somebody older telling you about this when you can speak to somebody firsthand and understand, you know, what's going on and maybe be able to ask them the questions that you wouldn't ask somebody else. I just think that's really important just to get that out there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks.
Thank you. So on that question of whether or not it's a kind of first choice option for A-level students, what do you think is preventing them thinking about apprenticeships? Why would they not think of this? Because it seems such a great option.
I think, to be honest, I think teachers are still very in the mindset of university is the right thing. And it's not that it's not the right thing, but when you kind of look at where a university student will be in 3-4 years' time and where we're going to be, a lot of conversations I've had is it's so important to get work experience. I mean, speaking for ourselves, we're actually averaging so much higher than just degree students in grades, just because we've got that mentality, we've got that motivation. But I mean, we've visited 16, 17 schools, and a lot of the teachers are like, it's really great what we're doing, what you're doing, but the perception is still around just going to university. And we've had a few conversations as well where the teachers have been all for it, but they say the parents back at home don't understand it, and it really is just educating people.
Yeah. I think you know, this is something we hear quite regularly as well, is that, you know, although parents generally, when they're asked whether they think apprenticeships are a good idea, and they tend to not be switched on to degree apprenticeships yet because I think it's still relatively new, they say, yeah, we think apprenticeships are a great idea. And they say, what about your offspring? Are they going to do an apprenticeship? They go, oh, no, they're going to university.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a definite shift, you know, that's happening, but it's happening quite slowly. And I think once parents really switch on to the fact that you know, their offspring is going to be not only going to university and getting a degree, but doing it debt-free, I think that's going to be the selling point. I certainly hope it becomes the norm when my children go to university, because I tend to think, you know, the cost of sending two children to university, you know, is is going to be immense. So it feels like it's a winnable battle, but we're still in the transition period, I guess. Okay. And one of the questions I have, and this will illustrate this, I think, this next photo, is whether or not your experience matches that of somebody that's going to university. Do you feel at any point that you're missing out on the kind of social aspects, and how does the business support that? How can it help with that?
So I don't think we're missing out at all. I think everybody would say the same, that actually we're earning a full-time wage, so we can go out every weekend, which we do. We still have a social life. Just from this picture, we do a lot of charity work. This is my kind of 20% of the week to, help the apprentices out and be an apprentice. It's all about, how, from our side of things, how can we network, but how can we work with charities? So we've done skydives, we've done cake sales. As you can see here, we did Tough Mudder. So we've kind of got like a big friendship group as well as the apprentices. So like you might have at university, we, have exactly that here.
I think that our colleagues actually, and like line managers, mentors, they encourage us to make sure that we are still young, to have that good work-life balance, and make sure that we still have a social life, because I think it's important. It's just that we have money to do it and our friends do it.
Yeah, completely. So the business actually actively encourages that, and it kind of recognises that that's important in order to retain you, I guess.
Yeah.
I know that I went to something last week at a large software company in the northeast of England, and they were talking about taking on apprentices, and there were some smaller employers there as well. And one of the things that was identified was that it's sometimes good to, if you can, even if you're a small employer, to consider taking on more than one apprentice, to take on 2 or 3 if you can, so that they immediately have that network, and they're not a kind of lone apprentice in the business. Not that means that doesn't work, but just that if they're going to be there for, you want them there for the long time, from the long haul. You want to make sure that they have that peer network as well. And I know that there's some organisations have thought about getting apprentices together from different businesses and creating a sort of one night a month where they all meet in a local bar or something, just to get to know each other, to create that kind of social experience that's important to keep people in a business.
I think.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think we all echo that, that it is really important. And even being at university, we sometimes go out with everybody from uni. At the end of the year, we've done big nights out. So we've also got that network with people from like Barclays, from BBC, from Lloyd. So but I think it is important to have an apprentice network as well. It really does help.
That's interesting. And so you've no lack of social opportunities, basically. It's not restraining that in any way.
Not at all.
We're very social people, Sophie.
Yeah. I'm guessing that. That's come across, definitely. And someone's asked a really good question, which is the workplace learning related to the school-based learning, I guess the kind of uni-based learning? If yes, how does it happen? Is this connection structured or just by random? So what I'm thinking there is kind of asking, so you go to university on your day where you're at university, and then you come back, and what's the likelihood that you're able to apply those skills in the workplace to help cement your learning?
So, good question. So when the degree was kind of being developed, we all, not us personally, but some of our line managers actually had an input on the structure of the degree. So straight away, they said, some of the modules, we think this is really important, we do this at work. So just an example, at the minute we're doing technology management, one of our units, which is heavily project management, and I speak for at least half of us. We've either done project management or been involved in a project, so that really works hand in hand together. And I think we can all say the same, that our assignments have been totally work related. So the title was very broad, describe a business system, and we could all actually put it into context.
And I think one of the things is we feel, and I know I do, feel very comfortable that if something comes up at university that I think I'm actually not really sure, I've not done that before, I can reach out to my line manager or whoever and say, I'd really like to get some exposure doing something like this. Can you put me on something at work that's relatable, which is something I'm doing at the moment. So I don't necessarily work on projects, but I am just starting off with a project management type activity to give me a bit more exposure into the types of things that a project manager would have to do, kind of.
So not only just your line manager can help you with that though as well, we've also got a peer network with apprentices. So if one person doesn't quite have that network, there's one of their friends or one of their peers will have that network where they can get access to questions.
And I think it's just important to add as well, at university you can actually tailor your assignment to what you're doing at work. So we've had a couple of conversations that if you don't think your assignment's relevant at all, you can tailor it. You work with your line manager, your mentor, put like a little bit of a business case together to say, actually, this will benefit me more. It's still in line with the unit we're doing. And you know and that's actually encouraged at uni. It's been encouraged to say, if you don't think this is relevant at all, please let us know and let's work together to make it relevant. So
okay, so they actually help adapt it for what you need.
Yeah. They actively do. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to you, Ryan. We've got around sort of 10 minutes left. Can you tell us about your background? Because in a way it's quite different, because both Ellie and Charlie had already started on an apprenticeship and then they were offered the opportunity to do the degree apprenticeship, whereas you came in as a degree apprentice, which was the first time that they had done that as an organisation, taking people directly in for that role. So can you tell us about that process?
Yeah, of course. So I suppose I'll start at the beginning where I was in A-levels, and unlike Ellie and Charlie, who both did business, I was totally unrelated to business and IT. I did psychology, sociology and history. So it's kind of strange how it came around that I applied to AstraZeneca and how I applied to IT. I applied to university to do psychology and got all my places, and I was looking around and thought, I don't actually know what I want to do after university. The market for sociology is so saturated now because so many students have decided to do that. So I started looking around at apprenticeships, and I actually got a visit from school from Ellie and her peers and the apprentice manager. Straight after the talk, I went up to them and asked them about the apprenticeship and immediately applied on that day. So the process after that was I got a telephone interview, which was about half an hour long. Went through that stage, and then there was an assessment day, which was 9 till 5 with 2 interviews and 2 presentations and a team building exercise, which all the applicants went in to try and do something called the plank game, which is always an interesting game for teamwork. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I wasn't really sure about university, and after getting exposure from people from AstraZeneca, I decided that that was the right pathway for me. Wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy the course, but it turns out a year and a half down, I absolutely love it. So it's great.
Did you apply to university as well and then turn down those places when you got this one?
Yeah. So I secured all my places, and then when I got accepted into MMU, I cancelled the rest of my applications.
And what did you apply through? Did you apply through Find an Apprenticeship on gov.uk, or did you apply through UCAS, or how did you find the apprenticeship in the first place?
So it's not done through UCAS and it's not done through gov.uk. The AstraZeneca IT apprenticeship is done completely in-house. So it's mainly found through people going around doing careers fairs. So the way that I applied was through Ellie and the apprentice manager, she's called Hayley, coming in. They gave me an application form through an email, and that's when I applied.
Okay. I know that if an employer decides they want to run a degree apprenticeship and they are working with a provider of that, whether that's a university or college, to help them put that together, that training provider will help them promote that vacancy. So it's not always dependent on the employer themselves to do it, although they can, obviously, they can promote their own vacancies, but they are likely to get a fair bit of help, and that training provider will also put it onto the gov.uk apprenticeship, Find an Apprenticeship site, so that budding degree apprentices can look for it there. So just to make employers aware of that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to add on that one that our apprentice intake from last September, I think a lot of them work with MMU, guide them in the direction of AZ. So when you're talking to the university about your degree, they also let you know which employers do take on apprentices.
I think also to add, you have to, if you're applying for an apprenticeship, you have to secure your role with the company first, and then they put you through. So it's not like Ryan said, it's not done through UCAS. You have to get your job secured first, and then they put you through.
Okay. So if you are looking for an apprenticeship, you need to contact the companies direct.
Yeah. So you need to find what companies are doing that apprenticeship, that degree apprenticeship, secure your role, and then they'll put you through. Because and sorry for taking the time out, but the grades that you need to get in are quite specific. However, if an employer takes on someone that they really like and they don't necessarily have the grades, I think they can be quite flexible in terms of they might do an assignment during the summer to say, is this person really capable of being able to do university? So there's some flexibility with the grading as well.
Yeah. I would also urge employers to really spread the word if they're recruiting an apprentice, particularly if they're small employers, that to use all those networks, because particularly at the moment where degree apprenticeships are big news, then they might be able to use their regional networks to get that message out there and find someone. Sorry, so more questions for Ryan. Shall I leave that to you and to Charlie and Ellie to ask those questions?
Yeah, so next question, Ryan. What support helped you settle into the business?
So I suppose very similar to what both of you were saying in the previous questions. We've got a lot of support from line managers. We have university mentors that actually come into the workplace to see how we're actually getting on. But also, aside from those, which you two have already mentioned, we also have it's called a buddy network. So as the new apprentices come in, the year above them are allocated a new apprentice, which they can sort of help them settle in, whether that's through finding some networks that they don't already have, or whether that's helping them with university work, because as of the new years that have just come in, they're now the year below all of us. So it gives them the opportunity to ask us about assignments that we didn't have the privilege of in previous years. So that buddy network really helped us to expand our knowledge, and my actual buddy was Charlie, so she sat with us here, and she was great help.
Thanks. So you kind of covered it really, but how important has it been that there's been other apprentices around you whilst you're also doing the apprenticeship?
I think it's really important because when I joined, I actually joined with somebody in the same year as me. We were in the same team. It gave me that opportunity to settle in easier, especially for my sort of personality. The person that I came into the team with, she was quite bubbly, I suppose, quite sociable. I was able to sort of tail onto that, joining with the conversation that made it a lot easier for me to settle. And especially with having you guys around, it gave you somewhere to go when, say, you didn't have much work to do with the charity stuff. You could go over, you could always tail onto them. You could always join and take more responsibility. So it was really important for me to have apprenticeships around.
And what do you see the benefits of degree apprenticeships are for the business?
Well, I think previously, like you were saying, it's fresh ideas. I mean, without the degree, I think you come in with your personality and you come in with your enthusiasm, which that is a great aspect. But with the degree apprenticeship, because you're learning things that the business actively want you to know, it gives you that advantage, and it gives you that step up to almost a similar level to what a graduate would be in the end.
Yeah.
So it gives the business almost, well, for us it'll give them 20 graduates in another 2 years.
Yeah.
20 people that have been to university and will be full-time employees. So it's a great benefit.
Has there been anything that surprised you about the apprenticeship and the content of the course, or being a degree apprenticeship just generally?
Well, I know when I joined, the massive surprise with me was the freedom and the time you have to take initiative and to innovate. So when I came into the working place, I thought it was going to be very, not structured, but very strict around what you can and can't do. So when you have to work, when you can leave, when you have to have things handed in for, obviously there are deadlines, but the amount of time that as apprentices we get given to innovate, search for new technology. I know in my team I get that opportunity. And it helps you develop as a person, as an employee, because it means you do your research, and you're not only just adding value from what people are telling you to do, you're adding value from what you're bringing to the table yourself. So that's what surprised me the most. Obviously the programming aspects, I wasn't really sure about that when I started, but ended up doing quite well at that, so that was a surprise.
Wow. And as you are the expert, tell us a bit about the Brave Challenge.
Yeah. So the main purpose of us doing this webinar obviously is to raise awareness for apprenticeships. So to use that, we entered the Brave Challenge, which is a government-sponsored challenge. Now there's three aspects to it. The first one is raising awareness to schools and to teachers and employers. The second aspect is called the community project, and that basically is where we use our skills that we already have to go out, try and raise awareness, but also to try and help people along. So we're using our IT skills to try and benefit young people and teachers and teaching assistants so that they can teach those young people how to use technology and also how to be safe. Because I know there's been a lot in the news currently about security, so we've really sort of got ourselves up to scratch so that we can teach other people how to be safe online. And the third aspect is media, so it's how we use Twitter and social media avenues to promote what we're doing. We actually met the local MP, David Rutley of Macclesfield, last week, and he gave us loads of avenues to go down with charities to actually help them with technology. So that's what we're doing, and that's why we've done our webinar today.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And so if anybody's on the line that could use your expertise as a team, they can presumably get in touch. They're welcome to email me, and I can forward anything on if anybody has any kind of burning requests for you guys to help them out on some projects.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're more than happy to talk to anybody privately if they have any more questions about the apprenticeships or what we do. Just forward them straight over to us, Sophie.
Yes. And so this is your first day at uni, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, that might feel a while ago now.
Yeah.
And that you guys are also ambassadors for the Northwest Apprentice Ambassador Network, and this is a photo from that, I understand, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, after we all became ambassadors. Yeah.
What's interesting about this is that if you are a smaller employer and you're thinking, well, how can I get my apprentice involved in a network like this? I suppose that apprentice could potentially volunteer for something like this and then find themselves in a larger network.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an open network, and actually the person to my left in this picture, Rachel, she's actually on the board of the Northwest Young Apprentice Network. So she actively looks for people that want to join up. So if you forward any names over to us, if you are an employer that do have apprentices, we're more than happy to sign them up. And it's a huge network. Hundreds of apprentices are signed up. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, feel free to. I'm really happy to pass on any areas of interest there to Ryan and the team. Okay. We've slightly gone over time, but that's because it was really interesting and really useful. I just want to ask before we wrap it up, what you would say to a budding employer if they were considering degree apprenticeships. What would you encourage them to do if they were thinking about this?
So I guess it's sort of echoing on one of the last questions that I brought in. If you are thinking about doing a degree apprenticeship, think about, I know I've had a lot of mentors that have come to me and said that they've actually really valued the time that they've spent with us because they feel like they get something out of developing us. It's sort of like I suppose it's sort of like a self-worth thing. But also if you think about the benefits that you get for having degree apprentices is after those 4 years you're getting 4 graduates, but you're also getting 4 members of staff that have got 4 years worth of experience. So it's almost like having that graduate buffed out. So it's really, really valuable, and you get great experiences from it. So I'd definitely advise you to go for it.
And another, talk to people who've already got degree apprentices and what benefits they feel. So employers that have got them already and see what their experiences are.
Okay. Yeah. And that takes me very neatly back to apprentice makers. So if you're interested in talking to other employers, please get in touch, join the community, and we'll see what we can do to hook you up with other employers to find out about how they've implemented their own apprenticeship scheme, to give you ideas as well. We'd also suggest that if you are brand new to apprenticeships, then contact the helpline. There's a small business helpline dedicated to helping businesses that are interested in apprenticeships, and they will help businesses of all sizes interested in apprenticeships. And go to gov.uk, take on an apprentice, because there's a whole raft of information. And after this webinar, you'll get an email in a couple of hours which will provide lots of links around apprenticeships in general and about degree apprenticeships, and I hope that's of use. But feel free to contact me if you've got any further questions that you couldn't find an answer to, and I will either try and help myself or I'll signpost you to someone I think could be helpful. I'd really like to thank Ryan, Charlie and Ellie. Thank you so much for joining me. I know you're really busy, and one of the things that really came across when we were organising this is that, yes, they're busy, really busy, and have lots of demanding projects to work on at any one time. And so I really value that you've given the time for this webinar today, and that your business has also supported that. So thank you very much to you, and thank you to AstraZeneca for that.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
for having
us.
us, Sophie. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great. Thank you very much. And so now I'm going to invite everybody that doesn't want to hear about funding, that they can leave the webinar, and that includes you guys, I guess, if you don't need to stay for this bit, and I'll just run through a couple of slides about the funding. So thank you, everybody that is leaving us at this point. Thank you for joining the webinar today. I think it's been a really interesting session. If you didn't get your question answered, then feel free to email me, and I'll see what I can do to help with that. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you. Okay, so for everybody that's still on the line, I'm just going to run through what's happening with the upcoming funding changes, because we have found that that pretty much every webinar we do, when we ask whether or not people want to know what's happening with the funding, people say yes, please. And so I'm going to just attempt to run through how it's going to look from April and May of this year. Okay, so there's two kind of key milestones really. From April, larger employers, those that have a payroll of over 3 million, will be required to pay the apprenticeship levy, and I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. And then from May, all employers, levy payers or not, will be paying to the new funding system. And so that's when the funding regime will change from May of this year, from the 1st of May of this year. If you take on an apprentice between now and that date, it will work with the existing funding system. So I haven't covered that in this webinar. I'm just covering what's happening from May. Okay, so an easy way to remember how the apprenticeship funding is going to work from May for smaller employers is to remember this acronym, STEP. So remember STEP for the 4 main ways government will fund apprenticeship training in SMEs. So firstly, support. So the government, from May of this year, the government will pay 90% of the training and assessment costs for the lifetime of the apprenticeship, and that's for any age of apprentice and any level of apprentice. So right through from level 2, as you saw the slide before, to level 7, when that gets into higher apprenticeships and degree apprenticeships. So if you're an employer that's exploring apprenticeships, you can run an apprenticeship in your business, and you will be required to pay 10% towards the funding of that apprenticeship. The funding is up to a funding band maximum, however, for that apprenticeship. So just using the degree apprenticeship that we discussed earlier, that the apprentices that were on the line are doing, the funding band maximum for that apprenticeship is 18,000. It's in funding band 6. Every single apprenticeship, whether it's a framework or standard, has a funding band. And it just so happens that the highest funding band is funding band 6, so degree apprenticeships tend to fall into that band, and the maximum amount that the government will fund towards that apprenticeship is £18,000. If you go on to gov.uk, when you get the follow-on email from this webinar and look at the frameworks and standards available, you will see, if you click on individual frameworks or individual standards, that each one has a funding band assigned to it. So you'll be able to see the maximum you'll be able to get funding for that particular apprenticeship. If you are a levy payer and you have spent your levy pot, and this will make sense in a moment, then this is how apprenticeships will be funded for you once you've used up your levy pot. So you use your levy pot first, and then it will go on to this particular system. So you will have to contribute 10% and the government will contribute 90%. If you're an SME, you'll be managing this process directly with a training provider for the first year at least. So they will be the ones that will draw down the money from governments. They'll be the ones that manage that process for you. You'll pay your 10% to them and they'll claim the remaining 90% from government. If you are a levy payer, you'll be managing this process by going on to the apprenticeship service. So it's an online apprenticeship service, and if you're a levy payer, you should be going on to that now, between now and April. You should be registering your business, and that means that as your levy payments come out, you'll be able to see how much you have available to spend on apprenticeships, training and assessment in your growing levy pot. So, to summarise, we were still on S, weren't we? So support, the government will pay 90%, you pay 10%. Any apprenticeship, any age, any level. Used to be different by age, used to be different by level, but now it's the same across the board. Teen grant, so the teen grant. A grant of £1,000 will be paid to an SME who takes on a younger apprentice between 16 and 18 years old. So if you are an SME with less than 50 employees, you'll be able to get an additional fund of £1,000 for every apprentice that you take on that's within that age bracket. And this is also applicable to all larger employers as well. Actually, I probably should have mentioned that. This particular graphic has been focused on SMEs, but all employers will receive this grant if they're taking on a 16 to 18-year-old. So it's not specific to SMEs. What also happens, but you may not see it, is that the training provider will also receive a grant of £1,000 if it's a 16 to 18-year-old that they're training. So done support, done teen grant. It's probably worth bearing in mind that if that grant is also available if it's somebody that is aged between 19 and 24 and has something called an EHC plan, and that means a plan where they might have special requirements, like, for instance, being in care. So if your budding apprentice falls into that category, but they're older, they may also be eligible. You may also be eligible to draw down this grant. If you are a levy payer, this will be worked out automatically when you go onto the apprenticeship service. If you're not a levy payer, the training provider will manage this for you. Okay, I'm going to go on to the E, entrepreneur. So the government will pay 100% of the training assessment if the business has less than 50 staff and the apprentice is aged 16 to 18 or is 19 to 24 with a care plan. So if you are a smaller employer and you're taking on a younger apprentice, you will probably get the full training costs covered. Obviously, in the case of degree apprenticeships, that's unlikely to be the case because it's unlikely to be someone under that age bracket, in that age bracket, that will be doing a degree apprenticeship unless they're 19 to 24 and have a care plan. Okay, provision. There is also a provision for extra training support, whether if the apprentice falls within an area that's considered a deprived area, or if they have additional learning needs. You, as an employer, won't see that additional financial support, but that's something that the training provider will be able to access, and it means that they should be offering extra support because of that additional support they've received from the government for that. So you've got support, teen grant, entrepreneur, and provision. Okay, just to talk about levy payments, feel free to ask any questions as well if you find that useful. So, levy example. So, as I said, you will pay the apprenticeship levy if you have a payroll of over 3 million. Don't be thrown by this, it says a payroll of 4 million. If you have a payroll of over 3 million, you're eligible to start paying the levy. This example is for a payroll of 4 million. So, if your business's payroll is 4 million, the way the levy works is that you'll have to pay 0.5% of this as a levy to the HMRC over the year. So they work out the annual figure, but then it's taken out on a monthly basis. However, you get an allowance of 15,000. So they take 15,000 off that 20k, and you actually pay a levy of £5,000 over the year. So that's split over a year period. So you can see that what you need to do to work out your levy figure is you take your annual payroll, you work out what 0.5% of that payroll is, you take off the £15,000 allowance, that will tell you how much levy you'll be paying throughout the year. You don't say goodbye to that levy is then available for you to access via the Digital Apprenticeship Service, which is now live. So you can go on and register for this service so that when April comes and your levy starts going in, from May you'll be able to see the levy payments start accumulating. So if your levy payment is £5,000, that's the example we talked about before, that's for the payroll of 4 million, the government will actually top it up with an additional 10%. So you'll find over the year that as you're paying in the levy over the year, that will develop into a levy pot for you to access of 5,500 a year over the year, and that is what you'll be able to spend on apprenticeship training. You have to use it up within 24 months from the point at which it goes in your levy pot. If you don't use it up, it goes. So you have 24 months to spend the money as it goes in. And in the case of the levy pot, it's kind of first in, first out. So you know, the levy payments are going first, they're the ones that you will lose first as well. So when you think about how much you might be accumulating over the year, the amount of 5,500 to pay for an apprenticeship, well, as we saw, the funding cap for an apprenticeship of a degree apprenticeship is likely to be around 18,000. So that probably pretty much equates to how much a degree apprenticeship is likely to cost a business. So it's about talking to your training provider and saying, how much would this cost? This is how much I'm going to have in my levy pot. Will this cover the cost of an apprenticeship? Because if you think that a degree apprenticeship is going to take 3 or 4 years, it could be that your 5,500 a month, if that's what you're accumulating, equates brilliantly to the cost of training one degree apprentice over a 3 or 4 year period. Okay, someone's asked whether or not we're providing handouts to the sessions, specifically around the costing and levy. No, we've not got handouts, but I'm happy to share the slides and give you a link to the interactive apprenticeships journey that we provide, so that covers pretty much the same information. Okay, what can you use your levy payments for? And this is the same as what can you use the government funding for when you're an SME. You can use it for apprenticeship training, and apprenticeship assessment. Nothing else. So these are things you can't use it for. You can't use it towards wages, licenses to practice, travel and subsidiary, managerial costs, traineeships, which are kind of like a work placement training program that businesses can use. Any other work placement programs are the costs of setting up a program. So it's worth bearing in mind that if you are considering an apprenticeship, these are additional costs that you'll have to consider potentially, unless you're not doing any work placement programs, for instance. But certainly the other things might be additional costs. And so, for instance, some employers do offer a little bit towards travel and subsidiary costs, and you know, the other things on that list. Obviously, wages are a cost as well to the business, because you will employ them. Okay. So that is the funding in a nutshell, and the levy payments in a nutshell. I hope that has provided you an overview. I've got no more questions coming in at this point. Hang on, Paul. No, I've got no more questions coming in at this point, but I'm very happy to answer them after the session if anybody thinks of something that I haven't answered here today. This webinar has been recorded, so we'll be providing that after the session as well. And as I said, there's lots of resources on apprentice makers. Just waiting a second to check no more questions come in. If you want to know more about apprenticeships generally, and particularly if you want to know about mentoring support as well, that's something that we're happy to support with as well. So thank you again for signing in to the session. I hope you found it a useful session. There's an opportunity to answer a feedback questionnaire at the end as well, and I'd be very happy to receive your feedback, because we're trying to develop and come up with new ideas around webinars all the time. So thank you very much, and I look forward to you signing into a future webinar with us. Thank you. Goodbye.